Do you feel like you are not improving UX design regardless of the amount of time you spend learning about it? In 2019, I was in the exact same place. Little did I know it was the way I practiced and not the extra amount of time I could put in. So I read this book by Anders Ericsson that changed the way I practiced and later on let me get my first full-time UX design job because my design skills had improved vastly. When Anders Ericsson began working with doctors, he tested if the amount of experience a doctor had was a good enough predictor on the doctor's competence. And he found out shockingly it was not. Meaning, the more a doctor spent on being a doctor and learning, usually they did not improve much compared to a fresh and new grad. Anders Ericsson asked why, and the answer he found was it was the way the doctors practiced that were wrong. They practiced basically in a not purposeful way like watching a new course or going to a seminar or reading a book instead of practicing deliberately. So the lie of that usually that we are told is if you put in the time and if you put in the work, you will improve. And Anders Ericsson found out no, you won't improve. You might improve with the right practice, but you won't improve just with any practice, you will plateau. So Anders Ericsson asked himself what are the constraints when it comes to the right type of practice, deliberate practice. And one of the constraints he found was to actually being in a field that was already established, meaning a field that was usually 100 or hundreds of years old like music or mathematics, where the curriculum of the learning was already determined. Meaning if you are trying to get better in mathematics, we kind of know what you should be doing between the 1st grade and 12th grade. But for let's say a sector like UX design, which is just founded 20-30 years ago, things are a bit more harder to find. We don't know what's the right step-by-step way to learn new subjects. So one of the things I took from the Anders Ericsson book was for UX design, it was a very good idea for me to learn my fundamentals from a much more established field of graphic design, which is why in some of the books I recommend on this channel were much more graphic design oriented, especially for learning the fundamentals for UI design. Next, Anders Ericsson shattered this myth that I had. When he was working with students in musical conservatories, he asked them to keep a journal of their experience when it came to practicing. So he was interviewing these students who were bad, good, or great in their craft. So he found out that none of the students actually enjoyed practice. Almost everybody hated the practice, but the great students put in more practice time. This was very important for me because once you implement practicing in the same way that Anders Ericsson describes, which is finding your weaknesses and working through your weaknesses with a mentor deliberately each day, it is very hard and it is very uncomfortable. They all enjoy performance, meaning what you can do afterwards in life, but none of them enjoy the practice. So if you are not enjoying the way you practice and it is making you uncomfortable, chances are you are in the right track of performance. To improve and become great in your craft, you will need a teacher. This was very hard for me to learn because I was a broke student at the time and I really did not want to spend any money on getting one-to-one mentorship. If you don't have any money but you still want to simulate a one-on-one mentorship, please click on the video above so that you can actually learn without spending any money. But if you have some money, Anders Ericsson describes getting a feedback from a mentor is the best thing you can do. Because when it comes to actually getting better as a beginner, the hardest part is to know what kind of areas are your weaknesses. Because if you kind of are not aware of your weaknesses, you cannot fix them. So because you are a beginner, you are going to lack the experience to know where you suck at. So it is a very good idea to get an expert to review your work and give you the feedback accordingly. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. And if you understand what kind of things I learned from reading Peak by Anders Ericsson and you want to apply it on UI design specifically, watch this video next.